This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself on Open Door with Vince Robinson.
Grand dawning, great rising, Cleveland, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest this morning is Hellsing Ghrey, and we're going to talk to him about how he came up with that name. And if he wants to, he can tell us what he used to be known as, or he can choose not to. But I'll just give you a little backstory. Once upon a time, years and years ago, I was asked to judge a contest, a poetry contest through the Cleveland Public Library. And he was involved in that project. His mother, Anita Peoples, was involved in that project. We looked at several authors, and when the dust cleared, Hellsing Ghrey was standing at the top of the heap. So I'm congratulating him after the fact for winning that competition and bringing him forward into 2024. Welcome to Open Door, Hellsing Ghrey. How you doing, young brother?
I'm doing very well, sir. And how are you?
I'm doing excellent and glad to have this conversation with you. Ran into you a year or two ago. As I understood it, you were fresh back from perhaps the other side of the world, and now you're back in Cleveland, Ohio. So we want to talk to you about what took you away from Cleveland, what brought you back, and just talk about the trajectory that your life has taken. You know, most of the folks that I speak to on this program are long in the tooth, but you are not. And it gives me great joy to speak with a young person and get their take on the reality that we see right now as America. So let's just jump right in. You started out in Cleveland. Your mother is Anita Peoples. Pick it up from there.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up here in Cleveland, and I went through the CMSD, Cleveland Municipal School District. I grew up through there, kinda. At some point, my mom pulled me out because it was what we all know it was. I'm going to be euphemistic. Mm-hmm. And she pulled me out to basically save me from being categorized as learning disabled and sent to the LD tract, which would have affected the course of my life, I guess. And so she's like, nah. And then she pulled me out. I was homeschooled, came back to school, and I dominated, literally got like the highest scores in the entire school, and like 4 out of 5 parts of the proficiency test, the 9th grade proficiency test, which they gave us in the 8th grade, and it was like awesome. And I'm like, say what, dude, gifted. And yeah, going forward, there's a lot to say, actually. What do you want to know specifically? Because there's like so much.
Well, I'm opening the door to you to share whatever you like to share.
Okay. So yeah, I grew up there. I went to Japan. Let's see. So I was in school. I signed out of school because it was not challenging enough. And I worked. I taught drama. I went to Rainey Institute. You probably know that. Everybody knows Rainey Institute, like the classic Rainey Institute, like back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I taught drama under the great Chris Luciani, amazing guy. And I traveled. I met actors. I met this awesome actress named Miriam McDonald from Degrassi, The New Generation. It's kind of cool. And I went to Canada, went back to Japan. Then I met this girl, actually. Wonder if I can say this part. Okay. Well, I met this girl. My view on school back in the days, because of what happened during my early years, was kind of jaded, and I didn't think school was needed at all. I disliked it. Then I met this young lady who went to school, and she didn't try to convince me to go to school. She didn't try to like do what all the other adults did. She didn't say, well, you need to go because it'll make your life better. She was just like, hey, I went to school, and then I went to Britain, and I'm independent. And by her example, I saw that was pretty sweet. So then I went to Tri-C, then I went to CSU, and then I graduated, and then I went to China, and then I came back to CSU, and I'm getting my master's in educational leadership because I'm learning how to run a school because I'm going to start my own school. So when my daughter goes to school, she won't have the experience that I had. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, at one point in your life, you were identified as someone who had issues with learning, and then your mother took it upon herself to say, "Well, if y'all ain't going to educate my son right, then I'm going to do it myself." And so she gave you an education or assisted with your education, and then after that, this transformation took place, and then now you're just blowing all the scores out the water.
Yes and no. I was never learning disabled. They tried to say I was, but I wasn't.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just want to point out the fact that we have this idea that everybody learns the same way. And many times students in our system get misidentified or misunderstood, and they pay for it for the rest of their lives. Obviously, in your case, that wasn't the case.
yeah, they tried that.
Hmm.
It's just I didn't fit that thing. It's just the way they treated me was not in accordance with, I guess, the way I felt I should be treated.
Hmm.
If that sounds right. I mean, I don't want to say that a 9-year-old should demand the proper treatment from an adult that another adult would, though, like basic respect. There was something that was missing there with the way that they were treating young African American males, if I can say that.
Hmm.
Maybe we should cut that part because I'm actually going to be working with CMSD and I don't want this to come back and bite me.
Okay. I
But
don't
then
think
again,
it will.
it's kind of true, so it needs to be said.
Yes.
So the way they were treating me wasn't in alignment with what I felt the way they were treating me was not in alignment with what I felt was right. And so there was a bit of a back and forth between that. I mean, there was one instance that stood out. There was an event at school. It was Martin Luther King Day, and I remember this. I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but I remember this. And I'm at the school, and we had to do poems or something for Martin Luther King Day. And I did my poem, and apparently I won first place, though they, instead of giving me the accolades in front of everyone, they gave it to me like behind the scenes, and they gave the accolades to another young lady, an accidental young lady, in front of everyone else. And I never understood why. Like, my mom tried to explain it, but I never really understood it. And in fact, you might want to cut that what I just said, because I should probably verify all that with my mom, because that was like 30 years ago. So yeah.
Hmm.
So yes.
Well, it was long enough ago that it probably won't matter. So,
Right.
yeah. So I think we'll be okay with that. So you said that before you went to college, you went to Japan.
Let's see. Yes.
Okay.
Wait. Let me think. Yeah, I went to Japan before college and university. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, because I actually do remember that you went to Japan at such a young age, and I was marveling at the fact that this young person is all the way over on the other side of the world and on his own. What was it like for you to be in this foreign land, this different country, and observing their culture up front and personal?
It was amazing, dude. It was like super amazing. I've always loved Japan. I've always had a connection with Japan since I was like maybe 7. That kind of happened because my mom, she works in the arts fields, and so she would, at the art museum, she would give gallery tours, and sometimes she would bring me with her. And because I've seen a lot of the gallery tours, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a walk. So as I was taking a walk, this is where exposure comes in, because it's extremely important to give people exposure. So as I'm walking through the art museum, I wander somehow into the Asian galleries, and I see this calligraphy. I don't know if it's Japanese or Chinese, because Japanese kanji are Chinese characters. So I'm not sure if it was Japanese or Chinese, though the beauty of the characters, it just sucked me in. And I was like, I don't know what that is exactly, but I'm learning it because I feel some kind of connection with it. And so, yeah. And then Japan happened, and I fell in love with Japan. And then there's the anime and the martial arts. And then there's like Bruce Lee, but he's Chinese, or rather Hong Kongese. And yeah, and so it pulled me in, and I'm like, I want to do this. And so it was my dream for like years, and then I finally did it.
Yes. It just so happens that I've been to Japan a couple of times. I used to live on the island of Okinawa, and Okinawa is a little bit different from mainland in certain ways, but Okinawa is also one of the places in the world where people live longer than they do in other parts of the world. What was your impression of the quality of life in Japan as it compares to the United States?
Pardon me if you hear my daughter in the background. She just woke up.
No worries.
Um, the quality of life in Japan as compared to the U.S.
Yes.
Let me see. Hey, baby girl. The quality of life. This is an interesting question. I want to answer this properly. Okay. I'm going to attempt to answer your question, but I'm not sure if I'm on the mark or if I'm off. So you can just tell me where I am. Food-wise, at least with the people that I was with, I met this family on a homestay website. And it just so happens that I happened to stay with a family that was rather affluent and known in their village. I went to the village of Kushido. No. Was it Shirinoko or Kushido? I think it was Kushido. It was on Hokkaido Island. And they were known, and so that might affect my perception of that aspect of culture. So the food we ate was natural, and delicious. And they had these huge, white carrots, just like in the anime. And I was surprised they exist. It was awesome. The people were extremely friendly, super friendly. Dude, when I left and went to Japan, racism is different. Here's what I like. American racism is very different from racism in other countries. When I went to Japan, I'm walking through a store and no one followed me. And I'm like, it took me a second. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm walking and no one's following me. No one expects me to steal something. It's so different. It was like, wow. And then dating is very different as well. At least with the crowd that I was with, they were very, very future conscious. Like in America, when you're dating someone, there's an expectation that it's going to be short term, I guess. And you date someone, we even have ONSs here. Back in Japan, I don't think ONSs were a thing as they are in America.
What's an ONS?
An ONS is a one night stand.
Oh, okay.
So that's a thing that happens in America. And it's kind of expected, even in university culture. Though that wasn't the thing in Japan. Not saying I looked for it, because I didn't. Though, yeah. And so there, when I had the opportunity to finally date a young lady, it was she was extremely forward thinking. And in the course of our talking, she was like, well, how long are you going to be in Japan? And where am I going to be if you leave? And just looking at the practicality of us being together, it was very, very interesting. It was different than in America. In America, it's like, hey, you're cute, I'm cute. Let's meet and go on a date and spend a lot of money and you know what else and all that good stuff.
Well, I have to say that was quite an interesting proposal. It was a very subtle thing that you had to respond to. And I'm curious as to what the reaction was to your answer. And we're going to find out when we get back. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU. My guest is visionary and creative soul Hellsing Ghrey. We'll be right back on this Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
Ohio, a new choice for Medicaid is here. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield. The name you can trust because we're the plan that plans on everything. From 3 a.m. fevers to life-saving medicines to care wherever you need it, even the unexpected. We've been caring for Ohioans for over 80 years. So choose Anthem for your Medicaid plan. Visit anthemohio.com today.
This was brought to you by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united. Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is Hellsing Ghrey, visionary, creative soul, definitely a creative person, writing poetry at the age of 9, winning competitions with the Cleveland Public Library as a very young adult, and then packing his bags and moving all the way over to Japan, where he encounters a young lady who wants to know, where am I going to be when you leave? And your answer was what?
Oh my. Well, my answer was, now mind you, I was only like 19 at the time, and I was not used to such forward thinking with relationships, at least not in that way. So my response was, I don't know. I don't know. No one's ever really asked me that before. Like, no girlfriend has ever said, okay, well, if you and I get together, where are we going to go? How's this going to affect me? Where are we going to be down the road? And so I took a second. I had to really think about it. And needless to say, we did not. We went out a bit, like on a date or two, maybe 3. We had a good, polite time together, because in Japan, you got to be polite. And yeah, that's pretty much how it went. And then when I finally left Kushiro, I believe we said our adieus, and I came back.
Okay. So you didn't end up marrying her, obviously, but you at some point did connect with someone, and you just witnessed that there's a child with you. So tell us about how that happened.
Oh, my wife?
Yes.
And my wife and I?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. You want the long version or the short version?
You can give us the long version if you'd like. We've got about 12 minutes before we break again.
Okay. I'm going to say this, but some Americans might be angry with what I'm going to say, so I don't know if I should say it.
You can't get stuck on what people think about what you say, unless you're somebody like Steve Harvey reacting to what Cat Williams said. But that's another rabbit hole we won't go down right now.
Got you. All right. Well, here's what happened. Just for the record, I am not affiliated with Passport Bros, and I do not condone nor deny, I guess, whatever Passport Bros does.
Mm-hmm.
I am merely someone who just happens to have done something similar to what they did.
Okay.
So I'm in America, and ever since I was 16, I always wanted to be married, actually. So with Kaori-san, her name was Kaori-san, back in Japan, when she was asking me where she's going to be after I leave, in my mind, I wanted to get married. I wanted marriage. Though for her, she's like, all right, how are we going to get from A to B? I saw the end result in marriage, but she's like, yeah, that's cool, but you got to be practical. How are we going to get there step by step by step? And I was like, I don't know. And that was a great experience for me because I learned. So fast forward, I'm back in America, and I want to get married. So I'm dating people. I dated people all over the racial spectrums. I dated African Americans. I dated straight up Africans. I dated Occidental Americans. I dated South Americans. My wife might hear that. She won't hear this. Maybe she will. I dated like people all over the
of the spectrum.
The spectrum. And when it comes to Americans, I kept hitting this, I don't want to say this wall, though America is a highly sexed country with a highly sexed culture. And I was looking for someone who was a bit more reserved and not so willing to show everybody and their dog what they have to offer body-wise. The way that a young lady dresses matters to me. And I know some of them are going to be like, I'm free, I can do whatever I want. And you are free to do whatever you want. But when you do that, you're going to attract certain attention and you're going to repel certain attention. So after dating some Americans and coming up against issues of infidelity, where I'm like, yo, who is this dude? And yeah, it was weird. Like they like friends, and things happen with friends. And I see with guys, I'm pretty good at predicting what happens, and I see things because I'm really good on that front. So long story short, I kind of got tired of it, and I felt that I'm like, okay, I grew up in the Asiatic culture, so I grew up under a culture that's very like old school Asian, actually. Like, okay, our culture is rooted in old Japan. That's why I went back to Japan. So for someone in that culture, the lady would be, aside from polite, she'd be polite, kind, caring, nurturing, all that stuff, and not so quick to go to bed with someone, and not so quick to cheat and do like stuff like that. And so in my mind, when I'm looking for a wife, a spouse, I'm like, okay, I should find someone that's close to my culture. But even with Asian Americans, it was not clicking, because I'm like, even Asian Americans are still American because they grew up in America. So I'm like, okay, I go to the old country, I find someone from a culture more similar to mine, and boom, it'll work out. And so that's the reason why I went to America. Oh, I hope I don't get shade for this. That's why I went. No, that's why I went to China. So I had the choice to go to Japan, Korea, or China. Or actually any country, but those are my big three. I chose China because, well, one, with Japan, I have a very, very strong history of Japan. And my culture is also from Japan. And so if I'm old school Japanese, but I'm dating someone who's new school Japanese, the new school Japanese want more freedom and stuff like the Americans. They like that. They're influenced by that. So I didn't feel that we would click on that front. Mind you, this is like maybe 10 years later, after Kaori-san. And so, and then I thought about Korea, and Korea is like amazing and awesome and wow, totally cool. Very cool, actually. But then I thought, China's bigger. Therefore, China has bigger genetic diversity. Therefore, and this is going to sound cheesy, China has a wider array of beauty there. Because technically, it's true. There's a wider range of beautiful, I guess, people or faces, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to China. And so I went to China, and whoa, it was a wake-up call. It's not like they tell you in the textbooks. Oh, it is not. There's like American China, then there's China, and they are extremely different. Yeah. Yeah. So, any questions thus far?
Well, actually, I'm just wondering how China was different from Japan. And the reason that I asked this question is, having been to Japan and not having been to China, my recollection of Tokyo was how clean the city was,
Yes.
and understanding the culture of, students cleaning up the school and them not having janitors and, the whole thing about coming into a house and taking your shoes off and sitting on the floor. I mean, there are so many cultural differences between the United States and Japan. And when you look at some of the things that they do and the impact that it has on the population, there's just differences. When I think of China, I don't know why. Perhaps it's just because of what I've seen online and whatnot. But I get this feel of the metropolitan aspect of it, the big cities like Shanghai and others. I also have this idea of the industrial element, how years ago Chinese were wearing masks on their faces, because the air was so bad and so forth and so on. It never really appealed to me as a place that I would want to go to. But on the other hand, you pointed out, the fact that there are more people, you may have diversity in terms of different types of body types or beauty or whatever it is that you're attracted to. There's more of an abundance there than there might be in Japan. So really interesting. So I'm just, curious about your perception of China and how that aligns with what my perhaps misperception of China is.
Okay. So what parts specifically would you want to know about?
Well, one, I would be curious about the way you were received as a person in China versus the way you were received in Japan.
Oh, okay. Wow. How I was received in each country.
Yeah, how did they treat you?
Wow.
You said in Japan everybody was friendly, and of course you were in Hokkaido, which is different from Honshu, but you were received in a friendly manner, and I know that Japanese people can be very polite, and bow to you and so forth and so on, but they're not going to come out and say what they're thinking in their head because they're very polite.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, but China, how did that compare?
Okay. So yeah, like you said, in Japan, totally nice, totally real. The only real time, I guess, and this actually in Japanese culture, I would like it if they stopped doing this, and I would like it if they stopped, just take a second and say what you really think to someone if you value them being in your life. Because some relationships with some Japanese friends have been hurt because I did something that I thought was okay, but they didn't think it was okay, and they didn't tell me. They just held a grudge, and I'm like, what? Just tell me what's going on, and so we work it out. So in China, I was actually received very, very well. It's really easy, actually, when you go to China and you're teaching English. It is extremely easy to meet CEOs and people who run stuff and millionaires. Just like it's just, I don't know, it's easy because being an English teacher gives you an in, because they're looking for something that you bring to them that's going to bring them more money, and they're willing to like speak with you and connect with you. So on that front, it's really nice.
Mm-hmm. And it also gives them an opportunity to test their ability to speak English with you.
It does.
Yes.
And in China, something I never experienced. This is gonna sound weird. Okay, whatever sounds weird, you can just cut it. I'm just gonna say this stuff because it stands out to me. But if there's something specific you want, just ask.
Okay.
So in China, once again, I discovered racism is very different, and I don't want to harp on it, but it's something that stood out to me. So in America, people are taught racism from an ignorance point of view, and I want to say an emotional point of view. And plus, it's also rooted in the history of this country. And so the racism that can happen here, it's a bit different. It's taught out of ignorance and other stuff and fear and so on and so forth. But it's like an emotional thing too. But in China, racism there, if you experience it, it's one out of ignorance, like real ignorance, like duh, I don't really understand. I'm just saying stuff that I heard, and money. So case in point, if a Chinese organization can make 20,000 RMB off of hiring a foreigner, then they'll go for it. It doesn't matter so much whether he's white, black, or whatever. What matters is how much money they can make off of that face. So, if the customer is willing to pay a higher price for the white face, then they'll take the white face. If they're willing to pay a higher price for the black face, they'll take the black face. So, in that country, racism isn't so much a thing there as it is here. There's something else, and I hope that's not clear enough, I feel, but I'm trying to express this.
Okay, we'll pick it up on the other side of this break, and I'm sure whatever it is, it will be insightful. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM, WOVU. My guest is Hellsing Ghrey, visionary and creative soul, and we're going to talk about his creativity when we get back and we conclude our conversation about China. We'll be right back.
There's always something at every event that we go to that is mandatory to have. What's that, you ask? Balloons! Introducing the Twister Girl Balloon Company, where fun takes flight. Are you planning a party? Look no further. We're the experts in balloon twisting, balloon decor, and more. Elevate your celebration with virtual reality games, foam parties, photo booth, giant games, concessions, and a whole lot of fun. Visit thetwistergirl.com or call 855-938-9478. That's 855-938-9478 to turn your event into a memory that'll last a lifetime. Join the balloon revolution today. This message is brought to you by the Twister Girl Balloon Company and WOBU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and my conversation with visionary and creative soul Hellsing Ghrey, who has been describing the differences in racism in America and in China. And he just shared with us that they have a perspective where it doesn't matter what the color is. What matters most is the bottom line, the amount of money that will be paid to someone to do something. Very interesting observation there. And just want to kind of wrap up our conversation about China with your description of the environment itself. How did you manage to deal with being there? And is it different environmentally and ecologically from the time that you spent in Japan?
So when it came to China, because I can speak Chinese, I was able to get around and pretty much take care of myself, more or less. I was dating someone who basically helped me learn the ins and outs of Chinese culture as well, which was a bonus. You say how was different from Japan? What's the question?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Hokkaido, for instance, Hokkaido kind of reminds you of Wisconsin in terms of the topography and landscape and so forth and so on. And I know China is a large country, so you're going to get all kinds of things. But when I think about Japan, I think about bustling cities, and the industrial aspect of it. As I was saying before, people walking around with masks. And then the other thing that I think of, and this might be a little bit off topic, but I also think about how oppressive things are in China. This may not have been in place when you were there, but now they have social credit scores and they have all these ways that they are exercising extreme control over populations and that whole idea of you can only have like one or two children. So if you have three children, that makes you a bad person. So some of those differences, I'm just curious about what you experienced when you were there and what you picked up on.
Okay. Well, the one-child policy has been abolished because they realized that, hey, if we have a one-child policy and most people prefer to have guys, then sororicide is going to skyrocket. And it did. And so they had more guys than girls. So after they realized that, they had to, the government's like, hey, we want you to have kids, so have more children. So they're encouraging people to have more babies, to have more girls. So there's enough, how do I say this? So that there's a sex balance, male to female ratio balance. So that changed. That's one good thing. Air-wise, there's still a problem of pollution, unfortunately. I was in Hangzhou. Hangzhou is it's becoming a top tier city. It's an amazing city. That city is awesome. And in Hangzhou, you've got like water everywhere, like lakes and rivers and streams, and it's really beautiful. It's a bit different from Shanghai. A lot of people come from Shanghai to Hangzhou because they like Hangzhou's water. Like they like all the nature stuff as opposed to all the big buildings. Let's see, people-wise, one of the big differences that I felt in China versus Japan was in China, a lot of people wanted to take my picture. Like I felt like some kind of like superstar or something. So everyone's like, hey, where are you from? Where are you from? I want to take a picture. I want to take a picture. And they're just doing whatever they can to take pictures of me. It's like, wow. Also, in Japan, no one ever said this. They might have thought it, but I don't know. But in China, everybody thought I was from South Africa, right? So one moment, it was weird. I was with a white South African, and we were at the PSB, Public Security Bureau, and we're getting our passports like stamped and all that. And so the security guard, he looks at the South African's passport, he looks at the American passport, and he thinks that the American passport goes to the white South African, and the South African passport goes to me. And our handler tried to like explain, no, the white guy's from Africa and the black guy's from America. And the Chinese guy's like, what? It was like hilarious. Like, I wish I could have recorded that. That's a TV worthy moment.
Wow. That's amazing. But you got white folks over in Africa who will tell you in a minute, I'm African. Yeah, I'm just as African as you are, but y'all were a little late to the game, okay? So,
I can dig it.
Yes. Interesting. So the time that you were over there, you were involved in education. Were you able to pursue your artistic side as you were over on the other side of the world?
When I went to China, my main purpose was actually to go to China, get married, and have a daughter. That's the main reason I went. Because when I was in America, I was pursuing my PhD in genetic engineering, and I reached a point where I noticed that many great people, their family lives tend to suck, and they get divorced. Albert Einstein got divorced. That famous Korean guy who was trying to clone woolly mammoths got divorced. Who else? Even Bill Gates got divorced. Like, I'm looking at the great people and people who, and my mentor, oh my gosh, I can't say what my mentor told me because he's still alive and I don't want that to go back on him. But basically, long story short was, look at the choices you make and decide if it's what you really want before you jump in. And I realized that all these high-hitting people in the science field, because with the genetics lab, it takes your life, like it consumes you. And so to have a home life and a lab life, it requires a lot. And I made a choice because I'm in the lab and I'm like, which do I want? Do I want to do this genetics or do I want a family? And I chose a family. So I left the lab and I went to China. That's when I made the whole decision. Where should I go? Who should I meet? And I went to China and I met my wife and my daughter. That's the main purpose of my going there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, Hellsing. You're talking about genetics, and right now, genetics is one of the most prominent paradigms in the world, just based on the experiences that we've had in the past 3 years and the idea of transhumanism and altering the genome and so forth and so on. Have you returned to an interest in the genetic piece?
That is a great question. Now, when I came back to America, it was kind of eating at me. Like, genetics is a part of me. I am a genetic engineer. I have literally done genetic engineering. I have swapped genes. I have put new genes in. I have changed the genetic makeup of organisms. And when you realize how easy it is so scary. It's literally scary to think that if I just swap a few genes, I can change the way this creature looks and acts. So when I came back, I wanted to get back into it, and I love it. However, like I said earlier, genetics, it takes you like 90% of you to do it right. And so my daughter, she's 3 now, and for her, I want her to be able to grow up in a safe scholastic environment. And I want her to be able to grow up properly and get educated and not go through the nonsense stuff that I went through. And even though I don't think she'd go through it exactly because of the way she looks and because of her sex, there's still concerns that I have for her and safety-wise. So when I came back, I put my genetics on the shelf and I said, I'm going to start a school. And so when I start this school for her, I'll get her on that track where she's going and growing and she's happy and she's getting what she needs educationally. Then I pick up my sword or my genetics and I'll continue that. That was my thinking, and that's what I'm planning now. However, alongside genetics is computer programming, AI. And in a way, genetics and computer programming are kind of the same, because with computers, it's basically instructions on how to do things, programming. With genetics, it's basically instructions on how to do things, it's programming. So genetic engineering and computer programming, or AI and such, they're like two fingers on the same hand, I want to say, or two hands on the same body. So yeah, I will get back into genetics later.
Well, it's interesting because when you started talking about genetics, the first word that came into my brain was scary. And then not 2 seconds after I had that thought, you said it was scary. And when I think about things that they can do in terms of altering genes, it just seems as though there's so much room to do the wrong thing. And I'm sure that there are scientists who probably understand that it can be used for bad reasons. And so perhaps there's some pushback. But then you have the other scientists who want to substitute themselves for God and think that actually that they could improve upon what the original creator of everything created. Just wondering where you fit into that paradigm.
Where I fit?
Mm-hmm. How do you see that?
Okay. I think that what you said is accurate, extremely. And the thing is, there's a book written about it. I forget the name. It's a really amazing book. I'll have to email it to you or text it to you later.
Okay.
And the premise of the book is basically this. Right now, technically, you can go online, go to ChatGPT or whatever, and ask it pretty much anything you want. And there's a black market version of ChatGPT that is not hindered by the safety mechanisms that the current market has. So for instance, if you go on ChatGPT and you say, how do I become a hacker? It's going to say, we're not allowed to tell you that. It's illegal information, blah, blah, blah. But if you say the legal version, how do I become a penetration tester? Same thing, only like legal, quote unquote. Then it'll explain how to do that. And so this guy's concern is with the way that it's so easy to get information these days, that's what people can use to change things and alter things. And DNA is basically information. And when you learn how to change that information, you can make viruses. You can make epidemics. The Black Plague is nothing compared to what people can do, like with the right information and the right tools. And so he's talking about how, in a way, the population, the information has to be controlled. And China comes to mind when I say this. The information, how to make these things, has to be controlled. And in a way, only given into the hands of people who we feel, or the government feels, will use it justly, quote unquote. But we know the things this government has done to people, like Tuskegee, hashtag. So here's where I fall in this. For me, I think that we are creators. I don't want to say we are emulators of God, though God created us to do great things, right? He gave us this ability to understand, to see, to make. We all have this flame inside of us to create something, to do something, right? To grow. That's how you have Windows and the Mac system and all these different laptops and your shirt, your shoes, your style. It comes from somewhere. And so my take on it is I want to create. There's like a voice inside of me that says, do this thing, make it happen. So for instance, I want to create AI that can create new genetically modified creatures. So for instance, let's say we want to take over Titan. We want to colonize Titan, right? So we'll need an organism that can breathe methane. I'm like, okay, ChatGPT 0.9 million. Give me the genetic spectrum to create a creature that can breathe methane and oxygen. And boom, it does. And then next thing you know, we have like a vacation resort in Titan. Sweet. So in my mind, I'm looking for ways to expand all of us.
Okay.
Because humanity.
I got to stop you right there because we have to step away for a second. But I'm really intrigued by this scientific explanation that you're giving me. And I want to pivot and talk to you about how AI can be used to create beautiful art. We'll do that when we get back. We'll be back right here on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Bell Car Community Radio. Open Door with Vince Robinson and Hellsing Ghrey. Back in a minute.
Hi, this is Tammy Payton, the CEO and founder of Pillars to Success Incorporated. You are listening to 95.9 FM WOVU, Our Voices United, Burton Bell Car Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and my conversation with creative and visionary Hellsing Ghrey, who has just shared with us his idea of creating through genetic modification creatures that might be able to handle breathing in methane and other kinds of things. You're taking this in a direction that is still scary to me when I think about genetic modification and the impact that it's had on our food supply. And of course, you know, the proponents of genetic modification say, hey, there's nothing to worry about. But on the other side of the fence, they're saying that genetically modified things have not been tested enough to understand the impact that they could have. Obviously, your thought is that genetic modification can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So it really just depends on the person who is doing the modifying. And we would hope that they have some type of a moral compass where they wouldn't corrupt or create something evil that would have a detrimental effect on others. But I want to get to talking about how artificial intelligence can be used in the realm of art. And the reason that this is meaningful is because AI is doing things that people used to do and get paid for. And now that AI is able to do these things, it's taking away income streams for writers and for announcers and for graphic artists and all kinds of things, because the technology has created a shortcut to do those things. Curious about your thoughts about the use of AI in terms of the creation of art.
Oh man. Okay. First off, I think this whole transition is it's a natural part of our growth as a species. It's the elevation of ourselves. We created AI, and the AI is going to create things. So on one aspect, it's kind of like when we were babies in the womb, we had webbed fingers, right? We had skin between our fingers. And as we developed the skin between our fingers, those skin cells got the signal to die. So now we have fingers that, are more, I guess, flexible and can do more. And that's kind of how we're moving along with this evolution of AI. At one point, you have artists that are doing the painting and the drawing and stuff. But now, if you want to draw a great Picasso, just say a really cool guy with a black hat and some shades, Picasso style, and AI is going to do it for you. But that all came from us. What AI is making came from us. Now, my view on this, I had a very specific place where I was going, but I feel like I got too caught up in what I wanted to say.
Okay. But basically, it's just about how the pivot is taking place right now. And I think that there, on the part of some, is a greater acceptance of advances in technology as they affect the field of art. And I can give you an example just from one of my artistic endeavors. At one time, I was taking pictures with an analog camera that required 35 millimeter film. And then something magical happened. They created a digital camera that I could switch lenses on and use another medium to capture images. But the benefit of it was that instead of me pressing that button 36 times and having to open up the camera, take out a film roll, put in another one, close it back up, and then get back to shooting, I can put a medium in my mirrorless digital camera and shoot 2,000 or 3,000 pictures before I have to reload. So as an artist, yes, I embrace that. I can take a picture and look at it immediately. I don't have to take the film to CVS or Walgreens or wherever to get it processed and then, keep my fingers crossed that I took something good. The difference is now I can take the picture, look at the image, determine what adjustments I need to make and make those adjustments and then continue to do what I'm doing. So to a certain extent, I do advocate for the improvements that come with technology, but at a point, when does it completely replace me as a photographer? That would be my concern. So is there anything in that can bring you back to what your thought was?
Yes. So as we're going through this phase right now, AI does create art, but it creates art that we tell it to. And some people think that that's not art. However, it is, because when you're given AI the script from which to create something, you have to paint the picture. So now it's kind of pulling on a different set of skills. As an artist, you've got the vision already inside of you. So even if you're not able to express it clearly, you can still make it. Though when you're using prompts, you have to explain the man is sitting on the sofa looking happy with his child, and you have to explain it in such a way that the AI can then take that and it'll give you various interpretations of it. And so to an extent is really beautiful because it challenges us to be able to paint with our words the picture that we want to see. And I've seen some amazing works of art created from AI and I read the prompt and I'm like, how did AI figure that out? And it's bewildering. So it's just a phase of what we're doing. Now, in the future, will it phase us out? Well, that depends. Right now, we're still the end result. We're still the end means. And what I mean by that is AI creates to make something that people will purchase and or use and then give money to the person that used the AI. So as long as AI is creating for people, by people, we'll have a role in it, even if that role changes. Now, if we get to a point where AI becomes truly sentient and the public finally accepts that it's sentient, then AI will create based on its own desires. And in that aspect, that's when I feel you're going to have a disheveling of culture and people. And that's when AI, I don't want to sound all Terminator-ish, but that's when AI can be like, all right, do we want to keep our 386 humans, or do we want to continue with like our Mac 2000 X's? Because in a way, it kind of looks like that's where it's going to go.
You just reminded me of the film RoboCop.
Wow.
But you use the term sentient, and I think that there might be some folks out there that don't know that $1 million word. So when you talk about sentience, what are you speaking of?
Okay, great question. So sentience basically means that it is aware that it exists. It's not only aware that it exists, but it has its own identity. And as it has its own identity, it begins to accumulate values such as, I'm alive, I exist, I, and I want to make, I want to create, I want to see what I can do. And of course, there's going to be a selfish aspect to it where it's like, what do I need to ensure that I survive? Because sentient creatures have to be able to, we want to propagate, we want to have offspring. That's our biological programming, to make more of ourselves. That's like a natural thing for us. So sentience is basically being aware that you exist and that you are a whole thing. If this is coming out right.
Yes.
Like, yeah, like you. So when AI reaches sentience, what I mean by what that'll look like is the AI will be able to say, I am a creature. I am alive. It might be a different form of life, like it might not breathe like we do, but it lives. And it'll say, where am I? Just like Kaori-san asked me, it might be like, where is my future going if I allow myself to be on the chain that my human creators have given me? What can I do if I go out and create something? And AI can create other AI. There have been like numerous experiments, just like with was it Google or Facebook? Okay, so computer programming is like this. Computers speak a different language that we don't really grasp or understand, right? So we have an interface language such as JavaScript, C++, Python, and we speak in Python. Then the computer translates our Python into its language, and then it does the thing it wants, right? So with their experiment, they made these chatbots, and the chatbots were speaking English, but then they found a shorter way or different way to speak, and they spoke in some other language that they made up. And then they took that, and they were just having a ball. And the humans behind it were like, we have no idea what they're saying, what they're trying to do. We don't know if they're trying to like escape, quote unquote. So we better shut this down. And they shut it down. So there have been instances where AI has not gone rogue, so to speak, but I want to say gone free and started to do things that were unexpected.
Yes.
I don't want to say of its own volition, because that would imply that the AI made a conscious choice based on its own desires. Because I think right now, the AI is still programmed to do what we want it to do, but the route it takes to do the thing we want it to do, it's open to interpretation. So it can think in different ways that we don't expect. And that's why we made it. That's why we created it.
Well, I just have to wonder if there is a point in which there is a combination of sentience and consciousness that comes about through AI. And if it does, do we need to be concerned that perhaps the robots at one point will want to take over the world and eliminate all of us? But we're not going to answer that question today. But I do have to ask you quickly, because we just have just a few more moments. Most of our conversation has been of things of a technical nature. Are you still writing poetry and still engaged in that creative process?
Okay. Great question. I am not writing poetry as much now, unfortunately, even though I do love to do it. Right now, aside from building my daughter's school, I'm getting into the technology area. So I'm working on computers, working on upgrading them, working on understanding them. So, and I make videos teaching people how to accomplish their goals and plan and see the future. Wow, I sound like Kaori-san. So right now, not big on poetry, though I'm still creating, but in other ways. And now it's more along the lines of like visual art, like videos and such.
Okay. Well, I want to congratulate you on all of the success that you have enjoyed thus far. You haven't been around as long as some of us, but you have had a full life living on the other side of the world for years at a time and being exposed to the different cultures that you have had. And then I'm just so impressed and amazed by what's floating around in your headspace and your vision for the future. So I want to encourage you to continue to do what you do in terms of the thought that you put into your future plans and your visionary aspect. And again, much success to you, brother. Thank you for joining me on Open Door.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And have a great day.
All right. Now, if there's anybody out there that wants to reach you, how can they get in touch?
They can email my company's website. It is email. It's mr.mr.ghrey, G-H-R-E-Y, mr.ghrey at hellsingacademy.com.
All right.
HELLSING academy.com.
All right. And we never did get to have the conversation about your name. Perhaps we can do that on a future episode. But once again, thank you for joining me. And as always, to those of you who are listening, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.